Good morning. We have already seen the loops, so let us study ahead of it and let us study a topic known as recursion today. What do you mean by recursion? Recursion means repetition, recursive, that again and again we are doing the same task, that is known as recursion. So, what is recursion in C language? As we have seen that there are three loops: for loop, while loop, and do while loop. So instead of using these loops, what we did was we were using functions. Now, instead of these calling these functions again and again through a loop, we can call these functions directly again and again, and this calling of a function is known as recursion. So what do we mean by recursion? Recursion is something we say that when a function is called repeatedly, this is known as recursion. How do we do this? Suppose this is the name of a function fnc. I write the code within this fnc, something is written blah blah blah, and I call this function again. I call this function again. So what is happening? This function is running, it calls itself, and again this is called, again this is called. So this is repeatedly been called. This is known as recursive function. Now this is self recursion. Function is calling itself. When a function is calling itself, this is self recursion. We can have indirect recursion also, where there is a function a, it calls b, and there is a function b, this b calls a. So if you see, a is calling b, it control goes over here. Now b calls a, it becomes, this is an indirect recursion. So what is important in this recursion is the entry point when it is being called, and an exit point. Exit point means when this recursion should exit. So for exiting of the things, what we generally use in recursion is we use an if statement, that this is a function, it is calling another function, means it is calling itself. So we put an if before it, that if some condition is true, then this function should be called, else this function should not be called, something else should be done. This is how a recursion works. Now to move forward, we will see a small example of a recursive function in our next video for making a factorial of a program.